It's brilliant to have the opportunity to welcome everybody here today. My name's Harry Goddard. I'm the CEO of Deloitte here in Ireland, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to welcome you all to our facilities and to welcome all of you who are tuning in and live streaming with us this morning, and in particular to all of you who have taken time out of what I'm sure is otherwise a very busy day. But I think it reflects the significance with which we hold this topic in our minds as something that's really important for us all to have the opportunity to connect on, to discuss, and to develop our own thinking in how we'll advance this agenda. It's fantastic to be here on the second anniversary of the Elevate Pledge Report. And I've had the privilege of being part of the journey for the past 2 years. And for an initiative that's 2 years old, what a couple of years it has had. It saw the end of a global pandemic. It saw the beginning and the ongoing illegal invasion by Putin into Ukraine. It has almost seen, but hopefully will avoid seeing, a global recession, and of course has experienced an energy crisis. It's really easy with all of that going on for all of us to worry about those things and to say, actually, we don't quite have time yet for social inclusion or in particular social impact. However, that's not the choice that you made. And the businesses that you represent chose a different path. And the path that you chose was to be leaders in corporate Ireland, to really think about how we advance our agenda on social impact. And if I think about why that is, I suppose 2 really practical reasons. The first is, and I can say as the CEO of my own business, it's the opportunity to set a tone, something that's aspirational and motivational for the people in our organisation who recognise how important this topic is. But at a much more practical level, it's an opportunity for all of us to think about how, in this very challenging talent market, we can think about different strategies, techniques and approaches to how we will widen the net we can use to get access to the best talent in the marketplace. Personally, I've been a co-chair working with BITC for the last 2 years of the Leaders Group on Social Inclusion with my co-chair Sinead Patton, and with the members of the Leaders Group. It's been a real privilege for me over the past couple of years to learn from that group and have the opportunity to work with them as we have all developed our own thinking on social inclusion. I would like to just acknowledge and thank my colleagues in our consulting business who provided their perspective and expertise, both from a human capital and a data analysis point of view, to really look at the raw data and help us to develop both the insights and actions that you'll see in the report that has been produced today. But finally, what's gotten us all here today? And that is, of course, business in the community, whose energy, enthusiasm, motivation, and holding of us all to account has brought us here this morning. And I just want to acknowledge and thank the business in the community team for their ongoing work and support to all of us in that context. And I suppose how best maybe to reflect that then in their erstwhile leader, who I will now hand over, Mr. Tomas Serkovic, who will be our host for today.
Thank you, Harry, and thanks Deloitte for hosting us this morning. And let me add my good morning and thanks for joining to colleagues online and here in this amazing room. It's great to be back here again. Let me start with the housekeeping. There is a hashtag, of course. It's Elevate Report 23, and you're more than welcome to tag us at BITC Ireland. So, why are we here this morning? And Harry said it. For us, in business in the community, successful business, it's all about sustainable and inclusive and responsible business. We see ourselves as a movement for change in business, and business for us is a key driver for change. Equality, equity, diversity, to me, means something very simple: leaving no one behind. And we really believe in that. And all the work that my 65 colleagues do every day is about leaving nobody behind and leveraging the power of business to make that happen. So today we are going to talk about Elevate, which is our very exciting campaign on equity, inclusion and diversity. And we're going to launch our second annual report. And of course, we're going to look with a lot of excitement at the data that's coming. We're going to track, as Harry said, look at accountability, the actions that companies have decided to undertake, and see where they are progressing in this space. But we're also going to have some really exciting conversations. We're going to have a conversation around disability and ask ourselves, are we doing enough in that space or have we stalled? We're going to also look at a Business in the Community initiative that we launched a year ago in this room, our Traveller Employment Programme. And again, reflect, are we still seeing barriers in this? Have we aced it, or do we still have a way to go? And of course, we're going to talk about leadership and the leadership that is needed to make this change happen. And I'm very excited about all the people that are here and that will be on the stage and joining us online as well in the conversation this morning, which is really what this is all about. It's all about making that change happen. So talking about leadership, we asked Minister for Equality and Integration, Roderick O'Gorman, to reflect on what that meant from his perspective, and in his heroic attempt to be a multitasker, he took some time to reflect, recorded a video, which we're just going to have a look at it right now, if we can, please.
I'd like to thank Business in the Community for inviting me to speak at today's launch of the 2023 Elevate Inclusive Workplace Report. At the outset, I want to commend Business in the Community for their ongoing work in promoting sustainable and inclusive business practices. Business in the Community is working with businesses to reduce their emissions towards net zero, to promote nature-protected business initiatives, to support equality and inclusion in workplaces, and a greater connection between businesses and their local communities, and to foster sustainable businesses with positive environmental and societal impacts. And they had set some high but most certainly achievable targets to keep their work at the pace required to make a real and lasting change. As Ireland becomes increasingly diverse across society and government, it's important we continue to challenge ourselves to respond to that and to seek to ensure that Ireland is an equitable and welcoming place. Organisations such as Business in the Community play an important role in progressing practical solutions that address barriers to equality and inclusion. Government must also play its part in this. Last month, I was pleased to announce the publication of the National Action Plan Against Racism. This action plan is a major step towards an Ireland where everyone feels included, safe and welcomed, where everyone has equal opportunity to thrive. Alongside this, we also reviewed the Migration Integration Strategy and the National Traveller and Roma Inclusion Strategy. Equality and inclusion are central to this action plan, and today's launch of the Elevate Inclusive Workplace Report, highlighting the commitment of 60 companies to work towards a workforce that reflects the diversity within Irish society, is very welcome. Through these established companies profiling the diversity within their workforce and taking a proactive approach to supporting and promoting inclusion within their workplace, they will lead the way for others to follow. Inclusive workplaces do not happen on their own. Businesses must hold themselves accountable, targets must be identified, set and measured, and we need to keep the spotlight on what is working well and not working so well. The Elevate Inclusive Workplace Report provides a valuable resource for companies to enhance recruitment and retention practices and build a diverse and inclusive workforce. I believe that when we have more inclusive, diverse and equal workplaces, it is not only beneficial for employees, but employers as well. Having a more diverse workforce can improve a company's reputation, increase its customer base, and lead to better decision making. When different perspectives are brought to the table, employees can collaborate more effectively and be more responsive to the public's needs. Employers who support diversity create a welcoming environment for all employees, a stronger workforce, and can improve a company's reputation. For government, for employers, and society more broadly, it is incumbent on us to challenge ourselves and find whose voices is not being heard, to challenge ourselves and see what more we can do to create a society where everyone is respected, valued, and included. I once again want to commend you for this launch, and I wish you all well in this important work.
Okay, so that is setting some of the foundation. I'm delighted that the Minister spoke about accountability, and in a few minutes we'll be all held accountable here. We'll look at the data, and he spoke about leadership, but he also spoke about partnership. And in Business and Community, we're delighted to be partnering with government and leveraging the network of members that we have, and several of our initiatives across education and employment, which are aimed at that ambition of an inclusive Ireland, are a result of the amazing partnership that we have with government. So let's talk about the data. I think that's what we're all here to look at, and I'm going to ask my colleague and Elevate lead, Linda O'Sullivan, to reveal what's behind the numbers. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Thomas. So good morning, everybody. Well, as you can imagine, over the last 2 months, the Elevate team at Business and the Community has been immersed in data. So I have to say it's wonderful to finally be here today to publish our second annual report. And I'm going to take you through some of the top line information from that report, some of our key observations. But before I do that, if you'd just bear with me and maybe humour me for a couple of minutes. I thought there wasn't enough moving parts on the day, so I thought we might chance our arm at a little bit of a Menti poll. Some of you may have it set up already, but the details are there. But please don't worry if you can't access it, if the technology is not working for you, or you simply don't want to access it. That's absolutely fine. I thought we might just take a little pulse check of the diversity that's here in the room this morning. But it's light-hearted, so as I say, do bear with me. So I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. The first one, and the code will come up again. So as I say, don't worry, and if we move too fast for you, it's just to get us into the piece. But which one best describes you? Would you say you're an introvert, an extrovert, or somewhere in between? See, everybody's going for somewhere in between. Interesting. Okay, so we have a few coming in on either side. Okay, I'm going to zip along then and say, what's your position in your family? Are you the eldest, the youngest, a middle child? Maybe you're an only child? Aha, look, lots of eldest and youngest there in that. Okay, so we have a nice mix. And the last question I'm just going to throw at you for this morning. Strictly Come Dancing. A dream opportunity, your worst nightmare. Maybe it's neither, but maybe just have a little go. And you can see it's not terribly clear on the screen there, but we're cross-analysing this here with introverts and extroverts. Now, unfortunately, I can't tell how many introverts would like to do Strictly or not, because I can't see that far. But the point of this exercise, I just wanted to do it with you for 2 reasons. The first one, very obvious, we're here about data. When you start gathering data and you do it across multiple characteristics, there's useful things you can learn. So for example, it might be interesting to know how many introverts and how many extroverts you're dealing with, particularly if you want to offer them the opportunity to do a Strictly Come Dancing. But you might also need to know, well, if it's only of interest to the extroverts, well then do I really go ahead with that opportunity, or do I maybe come up with some options for the introverts? Or maybe you know that there's introverts that would love the opportunity, but your strategies for getting them on board and to avail of that opportunity might be quite different than the strategies you'd employ to bring the extroverts in. So there's a practical application to collecting your data and understanding the individuals that you're working with. The second reason that I wanted to run that exercise was because we all know, look, every single one of us is made up of a variety of characteristics. I'm the eldest. I'm an extrovert, I'd say, and probably non-binary on the Strictly Come Dancing, but really if push came to shove, I'd say, yeah, dream opportunity. Would you have guessed? I'm sure there's plenty here and virtually that probably share those same characteristics. But the important point is some of the characteristics that define us will either give us an advantage towards opportunity or actually might act as a barrier to opportunity. So I'm going to share a list with you. And if you can read that, and apologies, it's a busy slide, but there's 10 statements there. And I'd just like to encourage you to take a minute to go down through those statements and just reflect on how many of them hold true for you. So as you read through them, just count up the number that hold true. If you want, just hold that number in your head, or if you feel like it, pop back into Menti and answer or choose the option that most reflects you. While you're just looking through the list, I can share that when I look at that, I answered yes, it's true for me for 8 of those statements. I guess there's plenty of people here that could also come up with the number 8, but your 8 might be different to my 8, and we can see. Okay, we can see some of the responses coming in there, and we can see that for the majority of us here in the room today, we're saying that like six or more of those responses are holding true for us. That list, and we could bring up much larger lists, but that list is just to give us an indication of the privilege that we have. It's like an invisible head start that when you can answer yes, you have in life. And that notion of privilege, it's a description that I really liked about it is having the understanding that the society I live in was created by people like me, for people like me. So if we think about our society largely being created for able-bodied people, by able-bodied people, we start to get the picture and we start to understand that privilege. So for example, if I have a disability, I'm 6 times more likely to be unemployed than if I don't. If I'm a member of the traveller community, I'm 13 times more likely than my counterparts in the settled community. Now, do I stop to think about the privilege that I have about that? Not very often, probably more often than most because I'm working in this space. But I suppose that recognition of privilege is our starting point. It's what's inspired us to develop the Elevate programme. It's what's kept us going for the last 20 years working on all of the programmes that we work on to tackle social exclusion. Elevate has a very simple premise. Employment helps us to build social inclusion. And so when we set it up and we had our vision to have a workforce that reflects the diversity within our society, we are doing that with the understanding that certain people do not have those invisible head starts, and so we need to look at what we can do to support. So it is wonderful. We've actually 62 signatories as I stand here today. We had 60 when we closed the data collection. And those 62 signatories are drawn from 11 different industry sectors. They represent over 150,000 employees as a collective workforce. So today, it's brilliant to be able to bring you some of the insights that we have gathered. Now the report, I said we were immersed in data. Just throw up a screen there for you to see. I don't expect you to go into this in detail at any point now, but just to let you know, the report is based on a number of different inputs and sources. So in the first instance, we take the diversity profile across that collective workforce, all 150,519 employees. We take the approach that our signatories are taking to managing their diversity, equity and inclusion programs. We take the actions that have been committed to by signatories and the progress that they're making. And we complement these 3 points with insights from our partners in the NGO sector that are working in the inclusion space. And finally, with analysis and commentary from Deloitte's Human Capital team as our knowledge partner. So, you can imagine, that's brought together a really significant body of research, information, knowledge that we can use to further our work. And the report summarises, it captures some of the key points in that. we have lots of data that we will be going into in detail with our signatories and sharing, I suppose, much more intensive analysis with the signatories. We'll also be giving them benchmarking reports so that they can compare how they fare against the collective. So just to say that will be an ongoing programme of work as we continue through the year. So I don't have time this morning to do justice to all of that data that's there in the report. So I thought I might just touch quickly on 3 themes. So measurement, disclosure, and culture. And if we start with measurement, so my throwing a little data set in at you at the front is an indication of, I love a good bit of data. But really, I just cannot emphasize enough the importance of data. Once we start to measure, once we collect data, and use it to set targets for ourselves and to design actions to address the gaps that we're identifying. That's when we're seeing real progress. So one of the really heartening things from this year is that across the board, we've seen increased data from the number of signatories that are starting to report and track particular indicators, but also the number of colleagues disclosing their profile. Last year, we identified that we had really strong performance on gender, and that continues through this year. We're seeing senior representation in the Elevate workforce at C-suite and senior manager level at 40% compared to 29% nationally. Other indicators, disability, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and so on, also improved, both in terms of the number of companies tracking them and also the number of people disclosing. Which brings me on to the second issue of disclosure. Setting up that measurement framework in the first instance is so important, but then you rely on colleagues to actually disclose their identity. And what we've seen is that that's a slow burn. And we really do need to look at that and how we can improve that. So even in those indicators that I mentioned that we have improved in, we're still seeing disclosure levels in at around 10-11%. Disability had the biggest increase in that we moved from 2% of employees disclosing last year to 11% this year. But even within that 11%, only less than 1% actually disclosed the fact that they had a disability. So if we come back to our vision of reflecting the diversity within society, and we look at the labour force stats that we have available to us, we'd actually expect that anybody who wanted employment, we should be up at about 7% of people with disabilities. There's similar underrepresentation in ethnicity, but one stat that I'll just draw out because it's really stark related to ethnicity is that of the 15,000 employees that disclosed ethnicity, 3 identified as a member of the traveller community. That's 3 individuals, not 3%. Thanks, Marian. Which I just have to say is, if we're thinking about reflection, take that 15,000 alone, we should be seeing 60. Now, the problem with low disclosure rates is that we can't actually say for certain, are we that vastly underrepresented? Or is it that people just don't feel comfortable identifying or disclosing their identity? Either way, it's a challenge or a problem for employers that are keen to support inclusive workplaces. So that notion of building the culture to support disclosure is just vital for progress. So on culture, we know this is long term. We know it has to be a strategic programme of activity. As I mentioned, we asked our signatories to share with us what they're doing in this regard. We asked about policies, about communications, about employee resource groups, the whole myriad of factors, and we have information on that we will again be benchmarking the signatories on. Couple of points on it. 33% of the signatories are setting performance measurement targets for executive and C-suite based on DE&I KPIs. I think this is a positive and it's something we're going to see increase. Partnerships are so important. 60% of our signatories are partnering with deaf schools. Again, really important to get in that early intervention and kind of raise ambition, but also access to opportunity for young people. And over 50% of our signatories talked about partnerships with employment support organisations. That's 33 signatories, and of them, 32 said that those partnerships have resulted in hires. And I think the 33rd one is just in very early days. But over 100 hires in the last year out of those 32 partnerships, which for me is the standout stat in the report. But there's loads of stats in there. There's tips, there's information, there's recommendations, there's lots and lots of data. And I'm on my time warning, so I'll move on from it there. But just suffice to say, I hope you can check out the report in detail. Do talk to us about any aspect of it. We'll be running peer sessions and knowledge sessions for all of our signatories to continue to improve our performance. But for the rest of this morning, just to say, we want to bring some of the information that we've gleaned to life, and we're going to have discussions, as Thomas has mentioned, on disability, on the traveller community, and on leadership. So on that note, Harry, I'd like to welcome you back to the stage to start our discussion on disability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Linda, and perhaps Anna and Peter could join me. And I think we are dialing into our Cork studio to be joined by Marian. So I will continue as planned unless the fidgeting down there suggests that hasn't happened. Thank you both very much for joining. And I suppose perhaps I might just start and set out why we're talking about this topic, and then maybe ask you both to provide some background as to the roles that you have, and also to Marian, and we'll get into some discussion. So as Linda said, we have over 62 companies, over 150,000 employees represented. Of that population of companies in the first instance, about a third are capturing disability data. And we will have seen, or some of you may have seen, a report from the ESRI earlier in the week, which set out some analysis in relation to attitudes towards disability in the workforce, with the majority advocating for more to be done. So one of the very practical things I think we can all do is help get that third in capturing the data up to be a bigger number, really reflecting the expectations that our society has of us. But of that third, only 11% are declaring or be able to provide declared disability data. And of the 62 companies, a lot of data, 8 of them are working with partnerships. And one of the things that we know through Business in the Community in all of our programs is that working in partnership with non-government organisations is really impactful in understanding and advancing the agenda of social inclusion. So maybe with that, Anna, I might start with you from within BITC. Perhaps just a quick introduction both to yourself and to the role that you have within BITC.
Sure, I'm Anna Greenhalgh. I coordinate the employability service in Business in the Community. That's one of 4 employment programs that we run. Employability, there's 24 of them across the country. They're Department of Social Protection funded, and they really focus in on the job coach, primarily on providing supports for the individual, very tailored supports, and then supporting employers as well. So it's a sort of journey that they take, and they have an 18-month period to get outcomes. And we're kind of in Business in the Community. I'm lucky that we're not working in isolation. We have the 3 other programs that we sort of work alongside. So we work with migrants, women returners, and travellers as well within that.
Very good. Maybe Peter, you really, and with the CEO of Specialisterne, really focus on a particular cohort or population. Perhaps maybe just to share with the audience background and some of the work that you're doing in Specialisterne.
Thanks very much, Harry. I suppose we're one of those non-governmental partners, and I'm glad to see that there's at least 2 of you here today in terms of the J&J Group and Accenture. And congratulations on the second report, of course. So, Harry, what effectively we're doing, we're a specialist recruitment agency. So we prepare neurodiverse people, that is, those who have autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, similarly challenged people, don't have to have a governmental recognised diagnosis. Very important, because a lot of people don't, for various reasons. It's a big barrier. And what we do is we prepare them for work, but also on the other side with our partners, we're preparing the employers to take them on in various ways, because everybody is different. And so we're very much a candidate-centric approach, and we're also very much a partnership approach. Yes, we are a charity, but we do not compete with other charities. We've memorandum of understanding with quite a lot of other charities in the areas of autism, dyspraxia, and dyslexia, the key ones for us. But again, of course, we've memorandums of understanding with several and many institutions of education of different types as well. Partnership, I've heard that word enough times today. I think it's definitely the way forward on this. If we're talking to a company, what do? We take the heavy lifting out of this, because after all, HR is always under pressure. I think it's often the busiest department, and we're very pleased. We celebrated yesterday with another company 10 years of their Autism at Work program, and really, I'll be fair to the managing director, he didn't think we'd last. And after 10 years, said he's hoping to see us back after 10 years more. And also they're providing our office space for free, which is obviously a challenge, and we'll get onto those for ourselves as finance.
Brilliant. So, Peter, thank you very much. And we'll maybe dig into some of those case studies in a couple of moments, if that's okay. I'm hoping we can make our way to Marian. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I think we are just working on fine-tuning our sound, but hopefully you can hear us now. And you're very welcome to join us on the panel. I thought I might start, Marian, and give you the opportunity just to set out your role and what the COPE Foundation is doing in Cork.
Thank you very much. So we have a supported employment service called Ability at Work. We're based here in Cork City, but we cover all through Cork City and County. And I suppose 5 years ago, we decided to set up this service of people we support within the COPE Foundation, because they all wanted to go to work, but they were experiencing many barriers going to work. And we were very lucky to be part of the Ability funding, and now with the Dormant Accounts, to be able to provide this type of support to the people that we work with. So it's a very specialised, individualised supported employment service where we support a person going into the workplace with the support of a job coach. So we manage all the difficult bits for a company. We do all the job matching. We support people during the induction stage, through the interviews. Our staff will go in and coach the person in on the job if that's required. We'll provide any advice, or we will work on the workplace accommodations that are needed, and we provide all the training and advice as well for staff. So over the last 4 years, we've created 124 paid employment opportunities here in Cork. And we really feel this is down to our strong collaborations and partnerships with companies we have fostered here in Cork. We also offer a one-day job shadow service. It's a one-day taster for companies to get involved with us as an organisation, see what we do, and then to see and showcase the abilities and strengths of the people we support. Last year, over 80 companies took part in this programme, and out of just one day, we secured 9 paid jobs. And I suppose the other side of it is then when things do go wrong, and you know, amongst the people we support is the same as the general population, things will go wrong at work. So what we will do is we will come in and we will intervene and we'll monitor and we keep an eye on the placement as well. So that's kind of a backup service we offer. Now, we would be, I suppose, very proud here in Cork, and what we want to try and do is make Cork the inclusive capital of Ireland. But unfortunately, we have a long way to go. Feedback from our job seekers recently showed that 71% of people felt that they were not getting a very genuine disability-friendly approach when they were job searching on their own. And I suppose there's 2 stark figures really to think about is there's only 27% of people with intellectual disabilities in employment in Ireland. And if you're a person who has an intellectual disability or has another additional disability, you can have, you know, more issues, then that rises to 83%, the chance that you will be unemployed.
Maybe we'll come back to some of those and how we can, as businesses, think about our response to ameliorate the practical challenges there are in supporting this community in getting into the workforce. But I might start with you, Anna, if that's okay. I suppose all of you have touched on how important it is to try to provide that facilitation between the organisation and the talent market, if I put it like that. Maybe you could help us understand that in a sort of a more practical way. I suppose as an organisation perhaps that's starting on this journey, hasn't really worked with a lot of third-party organisations, what are the sorts of things that one might anticipate? Or what might we expect?
Yeah, I suppose the key to success, in my experience, is just, I suppose, where the focus lies. So the more you can focus on employment as your outcome, the better things are going to go, because we know that that's the big transformer. So, if your objectives are around increasing employability or increasing the number of applications that you might get through diverse channels, this still is quite broad. It leaves room for, I suppose, to fall short in terms of impact. Whereas if you just have employment as your objective, it just works so much better. There's no hiding then. You just have to, I suppose, focus on what's going to get these diverse people in the door. And the partnership approach is, to me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Like, if we're plugged into the communities, we're plugged into the where we can source, the diverse candidates that you're trying to reach. We can do, as people have mentioned, the heavy lifting on that part. So why not use us to do that bit that is very time-consuming? And then the job coach role that I think we all share, it's absolutely key to making it work. We've got so many examples. I'm just going to call out SSE Electricity, who we've worked with since 2017. I think they're quite brave in that they were quite early on in terms of saying, right, we are going to hire. That's what we're trying to do here. Not employability, but employment. And they've worked with us every year on it. And again, they've gone through a journey themselves. They started doing it quite broad. We'll take any kind of person who's long-term unemployed, and then they've focused in on disability just to try and move that dial. And yeah, we've just found that the job coach being able to kind of intervene, advocate, be an intermediary has really saved contracts from falling away. Like, we know people have been, say the SSE staff know there's something wrong, and they've asked, what can we do to help? And the person just said, I need more time, I need more time. Now, it just wasn't really working in terms of the interaction there, but the job coach was able to come in and really sort of mediate the conversation. In fact, they just needed somebody to say they were doing well in bits, okay? They weren't doing well in everything, and they were being told, these bits aren't going great, but they just needed to hear that they were doing well in other pieces, just for the confidence boost. So that was just so simple, but it was enough to keep the person going,
So I suppose helping us as the employer understand the sorts of strategies and tactics that might be different to ensure that those that we're welcoming into our workforce do feel included and are being supported at a very practical, sort of tactical level.
Exactly. I think people are trying to sort of cover up their weakness, as it were, where in fact it needs to be brought out into the open and discussed. Yeah.
And Peter, are there practical examples where you've seen that come to life in your experience in working with organisations? I know you have a case study which is included in the Elevate report, which I think is really strong.
Well, very much so, Harry. We, first of all, having prepared candidates, and it's very important that you do understand what not only their abilities, but also what they're interested in, because, we're all people. You might have autism, but it might only account for certain features. You have ambitions as well. It's a thing to watch, particularly later on in life. And that's one of our differences, that we support the candidates for free, because we're obviously funded in different ways. And also, we've been working with a couple now, particularly more than a couple actually, who have reached sort of glass ceilings in some companies because they were taken under the disability label. But really what we're doing is to prepare a company. So yes, we do general awareness things. That's so we talk to maybe the key managers. Often it's, as somebody said, it's leadership. The main man wants it to happen, the main woman wants it to happen, and it says boom. Then it's really preparing, though, the various teams involved, HR, the hiring manager who wants to do it but isn't used to it, and then also setting up to have a buddy who will step forward to support the person that we're putting forward. The other big one is disclosure. We've always not insisted, but very much had our candidates tell as much as they need to about what they require in terms of accommodations, which, by the way, are usually of no or low cost. That's very important. So, we have one guy in an IT company who wanted to sit near the window, and that's often the other way around. It's often they want to sit far away. He wanted to see the garden, And it was solved in a second when we were doing a little walkthrough audit with him. Another person said, I'll swap with you. And so he was able to do it. So you get also things like that would be location, sensory issues are generally a big issue, and noise is often. So yes, wearing earphones or something, protectors, sorry, very much helps on that. But one of our guys actually said he couldn't go to the canteen because of the noise. So they knew that he wasn't being socially ignorant, because that's a big challenge as well, is the whole social issue. So, well, a long story short, they respected him for that. That's because we had briefed the team that he was going into about this particular issue, because he told us we could. And we briefed them without having him in the room, so nobody was embarrassed to ask the stupid questions, because the stupid questions are inevitably the right questions, you know, in our type of business. And then he actually came along, basically took over the soccer club, became the manager of the group he was put into, headhunted by an international company internally, and he now lives in Canada and is married. You know, he's that, you know, so he's one of the cases. So we have some lovely cases like that, and he's been very good for us because he's advocates for us, you know, on a personal level. I was with another yesterday, and his problem was tracksuits, and he wore bright blue tracksuits, and the manager who interviewed him said, we'll have him, he's great, but he can't wear those tracksuits. So I spoke to him, he said, well, I'm not getting out of these tracksuits. But it was, the issue was fabric, the feeling of the fabric. Well, the solution was wearing black tracksuits with black runners. He thought they were also orange. But funny enough, we had 10-year celebration of the company yesterday, being involved with us, and there he was talking as one of the first candidates ever taken in a bright blue tracksuit. So, but he's accepted now. So the accommodation is now there. And often it is like that. Now, so obviously, somebody made a good point. Things go wrong. And that's why we're in their support. When he ran into an issue of not getting the tracksuit man promoted, we were able to talk him through how you actually go about this and self-advocate for yourself. It's a big issue, self-advocation. And he then got, well, I put it this way, in a big IT company, he got a 50% salary increase in one review. That doesn't happen, you know, I can see that response. But he's also made a senior lead, and he's just technical support. He's also very social, honest, and loyal worker.
It's a great story. So really, really good practical benefits, but also very practical supports. And you know, not as you put very well there, Peter. They're not things that there's a high barrier to being able to solve for.
No.
The barrier really is the insight, and getting access to that expertise is hugely helpful for organisations who are heading down this path.
And really, just suck it and see. Start with one if you want to, and just get the feel of it, because it's fear that is the problem.
And Marian, I think we were able to enjoy a great. I'm being given my time warning. Clearly, the clock is wrong. We got a great case study of work that COPE is doing, perhaps just to get some perspective, I suppose, again, as an employer, in thinking about the sorts of support that you've been able to provide to organisations and help them be successful in ensuring the gainful employment.
So I suppose one of the things that we probably come across most is, you know, maybe a little bit of lack of understanding, or perhaps even just the fear of getting it wrong. How do we even start, you know, this process? How do we bring somebody into the company? So we would suggest, you know, going out there, meeting companies, delivering disability awareness training. Part of our disability awareness training also includes the people we support, because, you know, when you hear firsthand people's experiences of what's happening to them and the barriers they're facing, and I suppose for us in our sector, the people we support, the main barriers is in recruitment. And, you know, I would kind of just appeal to companies this morning, maybe looking at, you know, being creative about your roles. Is there, you know, trying to avoid the one size that fits all? You know, can we customize? Can we modify? Can you change the hours? Can the role be split in two and give two people an opportunity to work in your company? And, you know, I think when you do disability awareness training, it needs to start at the top and work right through the whole company. so that everybody is on the same page, really. I suppose one of the particular barriers we find is the online recruitment. It is a huge barrier, and I suppose the advances in IT now at the moment, the people we support would have literacy issues, so they don't always have access to their email. So again, we would say to you, reach out to colleges, reach out to specialist organisations in your own communities, and look at different ways, maybe through social media and advertising roles as well. And just around the whole interview process, and someone even comes into work, having that piece around disclosure, having that piece of paper or a part on your application form, start at the very start, that you're welcoming people with all different abilities, and allow a section there then for people to disclose. Bring up the subject again at the interview, bring it up again during the induction process until somebody feels comfortable. You've got to remember where this person is coming from. They've been through a lot of knocks in their lives, and they're terrified by exposing this, what they might consider a weakness. It'll come against them in this job opportunity. And I always say, ask the experts, ask the person with the disability. They're the people that know best. And as I said, looking creatively maybe at the recruitment process. But, and I know everybody's said it here already before, but it is that support that we can offer as specialist organisations around the country. We can come in and do that hard work for you. We can, provide the job coaches, and things will go wrong exactly the same as the rest of the population. And I would say there's two last things I'd like to say. One is kind of tokenism, creating jobs just for the sake of it, for for the inclusion piece. Please try and, where possible, make sure that the job is meaningful and the person is valued and they're not placed in an undervalued role. I think that's terribly important, as well, when you're thinking about employing a person with a disability.
Marian,
So,
thank you very much. I'm going to call us to close in a second. I will give Peter perhaps an opportunity in a moment to give us his one call to action. But I think the things that we've heard, and just maybe by way of acknowledging the contribution from the panel this morning, the things that we've heard about really taking it seriously, tokenism, making sure that we're actually focused on how we're going to hire talent into our organisation, not just how we're going to facilitate social impact, was one of I think the key things. Thinking about how we shape the jobs, the role descriptions, really important. The language that we use internally isn't the language that's used necessarily out in the community, and recognising that early is super important. And getting advice, and looking to get advice with people who are keen to help ensure that we're successful in not just recruiting, but also onboarding and ensuring the ongoing success of these individuals in our organisations is really important. And Peter, if you were to ask of us to do one thing.
I sort of did it already. Really just try it, because to be quite honest, it works. And I know that some of you sitting in the audience knows it works very, very well indeed. And it's not tokenism, it's talent you're getting.
Peter, Anna, Marian, thank you very much. Well done. Thanks. Well done. Well done. Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue, and that was quite a fantastic conversation on disability. Before we go into the next part, I want to take a moment, because at the end of this session, there's never time to acknowledge everybody. And I want to, I said there are 65 people working with me in business in the community who do exceptional work. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge our Elevate team, because they do all that data takes a lot of work and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of passion. And I want to recognize Richa Tiagi. I don't know, Richa, where you are, but I hope I can. There you are at the very back. Louise Murray and Linda O'Sullivan. And also to Joe O'Donnell and Pete Kavanagh, that are also part of that team, and they do an incredible work. So, I'm delighted also that this morning I'm joined by 3 of our board directors, and very soon you'll be hearing from Sinead Patton and Debbie Byrne. But just a few weeks ago, I was delighted that Sinead, Debbie and the rest of the board appointed Pat O'Doherty as our new chairperson. Pat is no stranger to business in the community or business in the community events. During his tenure as chief executive of ESB, he took a decisive role in a lot of the transformations that happened in that company. of course, we can talk a lot about the decarbonization of energy, but also in terms of inclusion and diversity being a key tenet. And I have an amazing picture still in my head. I spent some time living outside Ireland, and at one point, I think it was just before the marriage equality referendum or immediately afterwards, I was walking down Fitzwilliam Street, and only to see the head office of the ESB wrapped from the bottom to the top of the building with pride flags. And that's when I said to myself, and I had been outside Ireland for some time, said, wow, things are changing and things are moving on. And that also happened during Pat's tenure as chief executive. So we couldn't think of a better event than this one to ask our brand new chairperson to address us and to take a moment to give his own perspective, his own reflection on the event we're having today and a bit of your journey ahead as chair of BITC. Pat, thank you.
Just rearrange the furniture a little bit here. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Tomas, for that introduction. Wow, I'm a bit stunned by that. This is my first event in my new role, and I am really honoured to have been appointed by the Board of Business in the Community Ireland to be its chair, and I really look forward to working with the board, with Tomas and a fantastic team in BITCI. Some of whom I know and many of whom I don't, but I hope to get to know you all and to work with you to further the objectives and the aims of BITCI. But of course, that's working with the membership also, because without the membership, BITCI cannot do what it does. So just to acknowledge the support and the role that the members play in BITCI, not just in funding, but in getting involved. And it's through getting involved, you know, my own experience getting involved with BITCI, you do, there's something personal in it, but also you bring something back to your own organisation, and everybody, I'm sure, finds that. You know, when I think about BITCI, what comes to mind, it's one of the first purpose and values-led organisations that I came across, and we're all talking about purpose and values now in business, but BITCI lives that. And of course, in terms of social change, has been in that business for over 20 years. I've always believed that businesses should be anchored in communities, in the communities that we serve. And you know, Tomas talked about the role and the power of businesses in bringing about societal change. And in businesses are a huge determinant, I believe, in the type of society we have, and indeed the types of society we can have. And that places an enormous responsibility. And I would go so far as saying an obligation on businesses. You know, and businesses should be reflective of the societies, you know, that we live in today. And of course, that brings me to today's event. I was delighted to be involved in a precursor to this. It must be 4 years ago now.
Yes,
Tomas, is it?
indeed. Yeah.
In ESB, the inclusive toolkit. So in a way, it's a little bit ironic. Well, no, it's I suppose it's fate in a way. I'm back around here today to be part of the launch of the second Elevate report, and I am really delighted about that. I want to just thank a few people first of all. So just to acknowledge a couple of BITCI board directors, so Debbie Byrne on post and Sinead Patton of Veolia, who will speak later. But in particular to recognise the work led by Harry Goddard of Deloitte and Sinead Patton of Veolia as co-chairs of the BITCI Leaders Group on Sustainability, the subgroup on social inclusion, and indeed all of the group and team that are involved in that subgroup. This second annual Elevate report clearly shows that there's a huge amount to be done, but it also shows what can be done. And what can be done, of course, that we all work collaboratively and cooperatively together. Inclusion is not just about recognising difference. In my head, it's the whole fabric of business. It has to be part of everything business we do in business. It's about change management, because this is a huge people-centred change management challenge and project or program. It's about building organisations and cultures which are fair, truly fair, openness of opportunity for advancement in paying conditions. It's about having an open and honesty in the style of management. It's about creating an environment where people feel included. And that word feel in my head is really important, because I can believe as a leader that I am the most inclusive and open leader there is. But if people don't feel that, and that's the real challenge for leadership. So this will be judged on people's perceptions of the organizations that they inhabit, and also in terms of their experiences in those organizations. So it's about walking it as well as talking it. And it requires leaders at all levels who embrace this ethos. As I suppose the interesting thing about the report is the data. And this can only be done by taking a systematic approach and a data-driven approach. At times as a leader, you feel you have to have the answers, particularly in complex change involving people, with people at the heart of it. And I used to struggle, what am I going to do to make ESB a more diverse and inclusive organisation, when I realised that in my organisation I had huge numbers of people who, once I let them know that it was something that I wanted, then they just did it. And key to this is data, having the right data and then opening the debate up based on that data. So we feel as leaders we need to have the answers, but as my mother and all our mothers used to say, a problem shared is a problem halved. So going to your organizations and saying, this is what I want. I don't really know how to achieve it, but I need everybody here working with me to help me achieve it. This is what the data is telling us. What do we want? What's getting in the way? What are the barriers? And behaviors, implicit and explicit, must come on the table as part of that conversation. And that is the real power in the Elevate report. So to the members and the organizations here, I wish you all of the best. This is a never-ending journey of trying to make things different. And of course, then through businesses, back to Tomas's kind of opening remarks, where we get this right in businesses, then we get that translation into society. And that is the real power of what businesses can do in society. So Tomas, to you and your team, and to everybody involved in today, congratulations and well done. And I look forward to meeting you all again at other events and to working with you to really further the objectives and aims of business in the community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat. Thanks, Pat. And you've definitely put some solid foundations in what we're going to do. I might ask Lindsay and Cathleen if they want to make their way onto the stage. And those of you who were here a year ago might recall when we launched our traveller employment program a year ago. Yeah, wherever you feel like I'll take this. Yeah, and we sat in this room, and I'm delighted that we're going to have a check-in and see where that program is going. Traveller employment was an ambition of ours for years, and we're delighted that Community Foundation Ireland provided funding through an anonymous donor to make this initiative happen. And I'm very pleased to be joined by my colleague, Lindsay O'Neill, who is the coordinator of our Traveller Employment Programme, and by Kathleen McDonagh Clark, who is the team lead at Exchange House. And we're going to talk a little bit about where is that going. So let me take a seat so it feels more like a conversation, and less that we're in a stage in front of hundreds of people. And even more looking at us from their houses and their offices. So, Lindsay, you stood here a year ago. You challenged everybody in the room and in the virtual sphere to take some meaningful action in terms of traveller employment. Can you report to us on how has the last 12 months been? Any progress, any results, any lessons learned?
Yeah, thank you for having us back. So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting year. We've spent a good deal of the time really promoting the programme and creating links with a lot of the travel organisations, primarily in Dublin, but also nationwide. So my colleague Anne-Marie, who was here last year, so she had a family wedding today, so she couldn't make it, but she has just been fantastic at, I suppose, creating these links. A huge part of what we've been doing is, I suppose, building trust with the traveller community and promoting the service that we offer. I think we were really warmly welcomed. Wow, this service is really needed. But, you know, I suppose people's experiences of racism across the years has been so prevalent. And so we have had to put a lot of work into building that kind of trust piece. We went out with the fantastic Ready for Work model, which Anna had championed as an employment programme for years, and we thought this would be a great fit as an approach to employment, and it didn't fit really that well at all. So we had to kind of take a step back and reevaluate, and we then, we're a small team, so it works well for us that we can kind of change and adapt as we need. We went to each of the organisations and we said, what does your community need? The people that you are working with at this moment, you know, what are their needs in terms of employment, in terms of training, in terms of education? And it varied massively. So even the need in Exchange House is kind of different to the need in Ballyfermot. So we've been able to, I suppose, and Peter mentioned it as well, just maintain really a kind of a client-focused approach. So meeting people where they're at their individual need, and I suppose taking that and moving forward with it. A huge part of that has been, I suppose, the partnerships that we've created, to use the word again. So one of those has been with Exchange House, the National Traveller Service, and Kathleen's going to talk about that. But yeah, it's been up and down, but really positive. On a personal level, it's just been such an eye-opening experience. I've learned so much, met so many fantastic people. Yeah, it's been really interesting year.
I've no doubt, and I'm sure some interesting experiences also with the employers as well. Thanks, Lindsay. Kathleen, good to have you this morning. So you partner with us on this traveller employment programme. What's in it for you? What's your experience and any perspective on how we move forward on this? There's some tough statistics in relation to travellers in the report. So where do you see this going?
First of all, thank you for having me, and it's my pleasure to be here. And I hope I do justice to Lindsay and the business in the community. They have been, I suppose the word I would use, they've been a beacon of light, and I mean that most sincerely. I work in Exchange House Ireland. We're a national traveller service. We're a frontline service provider. We have 4 major services: youth service, mental health, family support, and I work in the education training service. So I've been there like 14 years, and for 14 years, maybe for the last whatever, we work with young people, young travellers, and you're always looking for opportunities. They're always looking for employment. We didn't have access, we didn't have the gateway, we didn't have the resources to do it. So I remember the day that Lindsay and Anne-Marie came, and I said, you know, they were actually, the key words I would say, they opened the door of opportunity for us, they listened, they actually offered. I couldn't believe it. It was like, you know, I mean when I say this most sincerely, here are people showing an interest in us. I mean, like, it's not something that normally happens. It's like, you know, we're kind of like the forgotten, you know, sector or whatever. And we have really fantastic young people that we want to provide opportunities. And it's very hard when you don't have the resources to say to a young person, well, we can get you employment, we can do this, when you can't. You're only setting them up for a fall. When Lindsay came along and when the business in the community came along, it gave us the first time a resource, an avenue to say, hey, maybe there is a possibility of working with partnerships. Do we have stuff to say? Yes, if I could start here, I'd be here forever and a day. So I have my own vision. But seriously, practically, simple things like we didn't have funding for training, you know, safe pass, manual handling, simple as it sounds. They made it happen. You know, you're so ring-fenced with what you do have. I'll explain what we have. We have a community employment programme and we have a local training initiative employment programme. But we have maybe 17 young travellers who are looking for, not all of them, as someone said, you know, it's like some are work ready, some might need a bit more support, But that's what business in the community has offered us. It's a window. It's like a candy shop today. Seriously, I'm thinking, where do I go from here? You know. But seriously, it's like I cannot stress the importance enough of reaching out, of listening, of asking us and saying, yeah, we actually want to hear. And that's not something we hear very often. Seriously, you know. And it's as I said, think of the term a beacon of light, because that's what it's like. It's like a beacon of light that you look at and say, where can it lead? And the possibilities are endless. You know.
Thanks, Kathleen. The report has a number of actions and recommendations, and one of the key calls for action is for companies to take at least one meaningful action to build trust with the traveller community, and I think that's a very valuable one. But to conclude this part, and back to the question that Harry asked Peter before, what would be your main call to action, Kathleen, to the employers that are in this room and who are constantly telling me, I don't have enough people, I don't have talent, I don't have the skilled people here, I'm struggling to recruit and to retain. What's your ask? What's your message?
I think there's two parts to that message. One is to reach out to the community through the centres, through the services that work with them. It's your avenue in, and let them know that you're actually very welcoming and interested in employing travellers in your organisation. Because a lot of the time the traveller experience, and I am a member of the traveller community, a lot of the time the traveller experience is that you're not welcome, you're not wanted. And I do not wish to generalise, and that's not my experience. Sometimes people ask me about discrimination, and it's very important you're aware of this. Discrimination is like the shadow that follows me through my life. Sometimes when I least expect it, it bounces up and it bites me. You know, and I could be refused access somewhere. You may not. Sometimes people do it. It is so normal for our young people to come in after a weekend and say, well, we tried to go out on the weekend, but we weren't let in. So sometimes you've got somebody, and I know it's not going off the point a little bit, it's like, what do you try to create where we work? A welcoming environment, an inclusive environment. An environment that's got an ethos that everybody knows, traveller and settled work together who we are. There's an ethos of responsibility and respect. And that I passionately believe you can create that. And once you create the environment for people to come into, they can be themselves. They don't have to be defined as any label. They're just a young person or any person who says, I've got talent, I want a job, and I'd really like to learn. And someone said earlier about the mentor. I think it's so important that sometimes you can be in a new place and you can be a little bit confused. And it could be something, if you have someone you can talk to, it could be the first 6 months you have a really intense program. But my God, you'll reap the benefits because you will have an employee who wants to work, who has the talent. Sometimes it's not a fit for everybody. It's about being open and saying, okay, there is so many, I mean, as I said, we're less than 1% of the population. But there's so much, we won't go into the issues, but there's so much kind of stuff that it breaks your heart sometimes. You see these young people and you're saying you'd love to open a door of opportunity for them. You'd love to say, okay, we're going to put you in employment. We're going to support you for the first few months. Some don't need it. I know of some young people who are working away and they're doing fantastic. Yeah. And they're just, a lot of young people want apprenticeships. They want practical skills. Yeah. They want, they really want to work. And I suppose, I know I'm going off the point, I'm so sorry. I jump into different things. But I suppose practically I would say, let people know that you actually are willing to employ members of the traveller community. They don't have to identify, it's just again, also, I think at induction for every staff member, I think the ethos of an organisation should be very strong and very much focused for everybody, so that whoever is in the company feels comfortable to be there. Yeah. That there's a common message across that we don't tolerate indifference, but we're listening and we understand. And sometimes if a person makes a mistake, maybe talk to them about it, give them a second chance. Because sometimes it could be, like someone said, they think of all the things they can't get right, but they don't realise all the things they're doing right. And that's very important too, just to say, affirm what you're doing. And actually, something, you have we'd love to help you on your journey,
Fantastic. That's a really strong point. Lindsay, your call, so when you come back to us in 12 months' time, what's your expectation of the business in the room and online?
I think just that piece of reaching out and building trust. Even I think there was 12, maybe 15 companies, people that came over to Thomas after the event last year and said, that's great. we'd love to be involved in that. Unfortunately, at the time, we had kind of little engagement for people to kind of link in with. But when we went out to the travel organisations, we would share that information with them, because there was, oh sure, nobody's going to hire us. And it is a huge ask to, as a job seeker, you have to put yourself out there. But imagine if you're a job seeker who has all of this, as Kathleen said, this shadow following you around. So to ask somebody to trust us, to be able to put your CV in or to apply for this job, and we can't guarantee that they won't be discriminated or they won't experience racism, but even for us to be able to say, well, there was actually 12 companies kind of came over to us after we launched our event, and they said that they would love to hire people from the traveller community, or that they were open to it. That, you can see people going, oh, okay, well, maybe there is that little kind of bit of hope. So building the trust, engage with your local traveller community. The culture is so rich. I know there's a list of recommendations in the report as well, and we'd be happy to kind of discuss any of those opportunities and to help kind of be a conduit and to build links. But yes, as Kathleen said, just to open a door, and just be mindful as well that, Pat said, that he has the ethos, but people don't know, people might not know. And I said, just be more conscious, be so conscious of creating that space.
Fantastic. Lindsay, Kathleen, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing more about this. Okay, so I'm going to move now into our final session, but just an interesting reflection. In Business and Community, we also work a lot on education. For the last 20 years, we have been working primarily with DESH schools, and many of the schools that we work with have travellers amongst their students, and it's fascinating, and it's a very important learning lesson, and it's something that we're trying to bring more together, that continuum of education into employment. So let's now move into the final session, and I'm going to ask Sinead Patton to introduce the panel. But if I may, I will introduce Sinead because she has been named a few times
Leave me
before.
standing here alone.
Sinead is a co-chair of our social inclusion segment of the Leaders Group. She's also a member of our board and a member of our Audit and Finance Committee. And in her spare time, she's the Chief Financial and Commercial Officer for Veolia and Regional Director for Veolia in Northern Ireland. So looking forward to the conversation. Thanks, Sinead.
Thank you very much, Tomas. Afternoon, everyone. When you listen to all the stories that we've heard this morning, we're all doing the right thing by being here today. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. You also heard as we went through today the point about leadership come up a lot and how important being a leader is. And when we were collecting the data as well, practitioners said that we need leaders to help us to drive the agenda. And I'm delighted to have on stage some of those leaders that are driving those agendas within their organisations. And they're embedding it within their organisations, and they're carrying out actions, and their actions are detailed out in the Elevate report, but also they've gone above and beyond in relation to that. So we have Debbie Byrne, who is the MD of An Post, fellow BITC director. We have Klair Neenan, who is the MD of SSE Electricity, and we have Eamonn Crowley, who is the CEO of Permanent TSB. I got that all right, didn't I? That was
Spot on.
That was my first task. So maybe, Debbie, I'll come to you first. And everyone has a part to play. And as a leader, that entails co-creating value with your employees. It talks about rallying around ideas that your employees have, but also building influence. So within your organisation, how do you help to embed diversity and inclusion within your organisation?
Yeah, look, it was discussed earlier. I think it is very much kind of leadership from the top. Like, I think there's a big kind of onus on the senior teams to kind of put that at the heart of the agenda. And I think most large companies now are doing that. And then I think it is embedding it further down the organisation. So what gets measured, I think, gets done. And I think it's about developing a lot of awareness training. So, I suppose we would have been out ahead of the curve in terms of the gender pay gap and doing that before that was mandated. And we would have done unconscious bias workshops at the time. Disability is somewhere where we feel at the moment that we've actually slipped back because of retirements, etc. So we've introduced, again, a lot of awareness, working lunches and kind of seminars, and to kind of bring that awareness to the organisation. So it's about communication, and keeping at it. And then telling those fabulous stories throughout the organisation. Like I came across one the other day, celebrating Ramadan. We had 2 fabulous guys who'd moved from Pakistan to Ireland to become professional cricketers, and they were postmen. And to be able to tell their stories and explain about kind of their kind of culture during Ramadan was brilliant, and the reaction that those posts got on our staff app was amazing. So it's about highlighting that diversity as well, and that storytelling.
And do you feel that you do get people involved, that there is that willingness within your organisation? Because you're doing lots of great stuff there, but do you feel people are coming along the journey with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose we're a bigger employer of over 9,000 staff, so there's kind of a recognition that we also need to kind of represent the community, very much kind of touch the community. But, as I said, like on disability, I'm sure in terms of members of the traveller community, like they're all things that we can do more on. And the journey in terms of female representation within the organisation, while we're good at that kind of manager and senior manager level, we've a long way to go in terms of bringing more people in at the postal operative level. And that does require a lot of influencing by largely a male cohort who perhaps get their nephew in or their mate's son, to then see that these are meaningful roles also for women within the processing plants.
Right, thanks, Debbie. And maybe, Claire, I'll come to you. And we heard earlier from Anna what some of the great work that SSE Airtricity is doing. Maybe could you give some specific interventions that you have carried out and what changes that have brought within your organisation?
Yeah, of course. I mean, actually, it was great to hear, on the earlier panel, talk about our SSE Works programme. So we've been collaborating with business in the community since 2016, and in 2017, we launched our SSE Works initiative, which is really about demonstrating social inclusion at the heart of what we do. So we've had over 30 participants so far in the programme, and it was about reaching out to the community and really talking to those long-term unemployed job seekers who wouldn't have had the opportunity. I thought a really important point that was made earlier was it was around giving people an entry point, that gateway, as we've said, that otherwise wouldn't have been available. And I think as well, actually, what it did for us, as an employer, was that it provided a great learning opportunity. So we actually were able to go back and look at how we recruit, look at our job adverts and really challenge the language that we're using. Is it really inclusive? And also challenge what we, probably would have seen as, something that is required if you're going to work here. And also really creating a supportive environment for those candidates that came on board. Every single participant had a buddy within their team. We also made sure that we listened to them and took on board their feedback. And another example I would give that I'm really proud of is that in December of last year, SSE announced its new family leave policies. I think it's a great example of where, so we have a number of SSE belonging groups right across the group. We've got over 11,000 people working in SSE. And we really listened to our employees around, the journey to becoming a parent is not the same for every person. And when you sort of historically look back at family leave policies, actually they can be quite binary in terms of, the assumption around what it means to become a parent. So we took on board feedback from our employees, and we really thought about things like gender, sexual orientation, family status. So we've upgraded our parental leave by a further 7 weeks of paid leave. So that's 9 weeks paid leave, whether it's maternity or adoption. We have 2 weeks of paid leave for pregnancy loss, whether it's for the employee or for their partner. We give 2 weeks paid leave for fertility treatment, and we give time off for appointments around adoption, surrogacy, fertility. And it's really recognising that there is a different journey for all of us, and that's okay. And we also enhanced, we've got a programme where if you're coming back from maternity leave, you can work 80% of your time for 100% of your pay and benefits for the first 6 months. And those first 6 months back, as we know, are really, really important, when you're coming back after work and you're trying to understand what this all means now. So it's really just giving people the flexibility to make it work for them. And that's something I'm incredibly proud of.
I'm sure the staff and the employees really welcome those changes that you're making within the organisation and the difference that it makes for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the feedback that we've received has been overwhelmingly positive. I think the staff could really see that actually we were listening to what they were saying. We took, clear and committed action in terms of what we were going to do about it. And not only has it helped in terms of staff retention and engagement, but also attracting diverse talent, which I think is really important.
So the kind of two key messages from there is like communication and then also listening and taking action as a result of that.
Exactly.
And Eamonn, just coming to you, in the same vein, how have you embedded diversity and inclusion within your organisation? Have you some specific examples that you can share with us here today?
Well, we spoke already about data and understanding your workforce, and we've 1.2 million customers, so our workforce has to reflect our customers as well. And we can see where the census is going by way of non-Irish, let's say, born in Ireland, or even children of parents not born in Ireland, how the whole society is changing. Like 12% of our workforce now is non-Irish. That's doubled in the last 2 to 3 years, and only yesterday we did another diagnostic, which is how many non-Irish are managers in the business, because that would look at it a different way, and 5%. So I was actually quite surprised by that 5% of our colleagues in managerial responsibility also reflects diversity, but we need to do more. So that data is really helping us shape how we are operating as an organisation, and indeed how we support our customers. Disability is an area where we realise we need to do more. We have 4 ERGs, employee resource groups in the bank, and we're about to set up a disability group to try and gather colleagues into a space where they feel safe, and to reflect where they're coming from. And I really loved Peter's intervention and his discussion earlier on. It was so enjoyable and educational for me to hear it, and indeed Marian as well, who wants to make Cork the capital of... we'll have to fight back for Dublin. But it's great that she has that ambition. So really it's about that data. It's about understanding where employees are, giving them the space for themselves to express themselves, and understanding what their needs are, and then we intervene. And the interventions are yet to come. They're ongoing, but there's more and more things that have to happen. And the next frontier is in the disability space, from my perspective, as well.
But it is that willingness of realising that there is interventions that need to happen, and that there is this willingness among us as leaders to drive that agenda forward. Just moving on then in relation to data, and Linda gave us all the information from the Elevate report. And it is great. Last year we did our baseline report, because you need to measure it to see if we're making any progress. And it is good when we look at from last year that we have made progress in relation to the information that we have. But a lot of companies are finding challenges in relation to getting that information, getting that data. There are some gaps in relation to our data. And then also we rely a lot on voluntary disclosure. And then some people may be worried about voluntarily disclosing some of this information. I've got a warning there from the corner of my eye. But again, Debbie, just coming back to you, how can we help unblock some of the challenges we have to that data collection? Do you know what I mean? So that we can enrich the information that we're getting in relation to the reporting.
Yeah, I was quite surprised by some of the findings in the data collection, even on some of the, the simpler pieces, like the age and the gender piece. That I was kind of almost looking at that and saying, why is that not 99%? But disability is one that we've just kind of started to measure. And it's interesting to hear Eamonn say that as well. But we found in the data gathered that exactly 5% of people weren't willing, or were non-committal in terms of disclosing. So I think it is about creating that safe and kind of environment and those supports. And I think that's kind of, a pathway to kind of getting more accurate data.
And Claire, anything from your perspective? Because I think this is an important on how we do unlock this and create that safe space that people do feel happy to disclose the information.
Yeah, look, I would completely agree with Debbie on that. I think, as we all know, it starts with organisations being open and transparent about where they are. Like similar to OnPost, we would have published our gender pay gap in ROI before it was mandatory to do so. So being really open and honest about where you are and where you're trying to get to. And we all know that really at the core of this is involving our employees. Their voice, their opinion is what really matters. I think sometimes there is that question around, are you really going to take action with the data? And the more organisations can evidence and demonstrate really positive, swift action, I think our family leave policies was a great example of that, where we understood that this was a key area for our employees. And I think you can use other touch points, whether it's groups that you have, that are led by employees, your engagement surveys. I think it's that constant drumbeat and, in terms of showing this is critically important to the organisation, that DE&I is part of who we are and part of our strategy.
And I think also it is that bit that they feel safe to give that information, that they don't feel it's going to be held against them in any way or restrict them in any way in relation to what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Eamonn, just coming to you in relation to a call to action, like what one thing would you do differently going forward, and what would you ask our leaders here today to do differently to encourage? Because we're making progress, you can see it in the report, but we all need to continue to do more to grow and to promote this. So
it's kind of linked to the last question, in that if you look at our own survey, so our cultural index score is very strong, our engagement score is extremely strong. Well over 80% of colleagues in the organisation feel free to be themselves. I think it's 89% of our colleagues, which is fantastic, and that all links into Speak Freely and how we all turn up at work. But then when we look for a diagnostic then on, a full diagnostic then on DEI, we're running at about 20%. And the objective, and you always have to be careful not to make it a kind of a mechanical process, because we're dealing with individuals and colleagues who have all different opinions. It's about that safety to express yourself and to provide the information with a view that something will happen. So there's a trust required there. But today we're running at probably about 25-30%, and this year it's our ambition to get across all our divisions that up to about 50%, and then try and work from there. And I think success breeds success in that respect then, and it becomes the norm. It's not so long ago that if I give you an example, and going back a number of employee surveys where we asked for in a confidential way for colleagues to take their sexual orientation, and and I'm going back now about 4 years ago, but our return rate went down by 15%. So you have to then go back and think of how do we build trust and get this information in a way that then we react to it and we do something about it. And that's where we're at. And when I go back to an earlier number, which is around managerial, people who are managers in the organisation, I want that to be higher. I want it to represent 12% of, like today, 12% of our organisation is non-Irish. I want it to be at that level. I want, when I go back to Peter, I think in the data area, we have colleagues in the data area who are fantastic data analysts, probably fit into some of the characteristics of Peter's clients, if you don't mind me saying it that way, Peter. And but yet, are we catering for their needs? Do they want to sit beside the window? I think we all want to sit by the window, by the way. It used to be the way you were showing your seniority. If you're closer to the window or the corner, you meant something. But we've obviously changed in that respect by way of how we operate. So that's how I think. That's my goal, and indeed that's a tone from the top. It's a tone from our leadership team, and it's an expression of action, not just talk.
Okay, so last 30 seconds to Debbie and Claire. What's your call to action?
I suppose my own kind of personal commitment, we're getting involved with businesses in the community on time to read and count. So I suppose 1 in 6 adults can't read and write, and that is a blocker to employment. So my personal commitment is I'm driving that through the organisation, and there's lots of barriers of volunteering policy and every reason why we can't do it, and when people abuse it and all the rest of it, and I'm just ploughing on.
You're exactly the type of leader we need to unblock all of those blockers.
So my call to the audience is for everybody here to personally mentor or get involved with one young person, whether that's a primary or secondary school level, and get them ready for work, whether that's kind of job shadowing, mentoring. We've talked about buddying, that everybody here would be back next year and have a little story to tell.
Perfect, Debbie, thank you. And last word to you, Claire.
Yeah, thank you. So from an SSE point of view, and I think it was in the report, we've committed to really focusing on social mobility. So we're committed to having 100% data completion from our employees by March 2024. So that's something I'm really driving forward. I think in terms of call to action, we've sort of touched off this today. The conversation shouldn't end today. The conversation needs to keep going. I think what business in the community has really fostered is it's given us all great examples of best practice where we can learn from other members of the Irish business community. So it's really just to encourage to keep the conversation going. And lastly, it goes back to the point around Where does DE&I sit within your business strategy? Within SSE, we don't have a separate strategy. It's built within the foundations of the principles of our business strategy. And I think that's really, really important going forward.
All right, thank you all very much. It is the importance of our leaders within all of our organisations and everyone within this room to drive the agenda. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's time to bring this the formal part of this event to a close. So for those that are online, it's time to make yourself a cup of tea or whatever you feel like. For those of you who are in the room, please do stay because there is some light lunch awaiting and some very interesting conversations to be had. bitc.ie is our website and the report is there, so please do take some time to have a look at it, download it. I counted more than 15 actions that I thought were incredibly interesting for us to look at, and there's some really exciting examples of leadership from business that you might want to consider for your own organizations. My own conclusion, hard to summarize so many exciting statements, but I'm going to quote Anna, and she said, move that dial. I think that is the message. That is exactly what we're all being called to do, number one. Number two, it was also said, Eamonn spoke about the diversity of permanent TSB's customers. So of course, Elevate is about employment, but there's another dimension which is around your customers, your suppliers, and there's a very interesting reflection in the report about are we as employers asking our own contractors and suppliers to pay living wages, or is that something that doesn't fall within, back to Claire's point, that other strategy, or is it part of your core business strategy? So message number two. And the third and final message, and I'll finish, and before saying that, just to give some thanks to everybody who is involved in this, our subgroup, our hosts. Thank you very much for having us. Our leaders group, our everybody who is supporting this. I want to give a special shout out to Lorraine Wall and Tatiana Hodakova from my own team who made this event happen seamlessly as they always do. But my final message is we're very good at ambition and action and measurement. But the fourth A that we all need to look more is around advocacy, and it's using your own voice. I was just reflecting on the comment in one of the prominent newspapers yesterday about Joe Biden going for re-election because he's old and he should be somewhere else. So that type of ageist culture, that's the type of thing we have to tackle, and that's the type of thing that happens every single day. Kathleen, it's not only happening in the traveller community, it's happening everywhere and it's prevalent. And you have an amazing power within your voice and your advocacy to challenge that and to tackle that. An intolerant and a racist Ireland is really bad for business as much as it's a horrible thing to contemplate. So thank you very much. We look forward to more conversations and to another report and more data to be shared next year. Thank you.